Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's DinaKalmeta here, and for today's news, I'd like to bring you guys a quick update as to what's happening between the United States and Venezuela. Definitely some tensions there, and the Pope does have something to say about it. In addition to that, we're going to talk about NATO and Russia, as well as what's happening with the two-state solution in regards to Israel. And the Pope has something to say about that as well. So definitely some very interesting headlines to talk about. Let's dive in. President Trump last night called an urgent White House meeting on Venezuela after issuing a direct ultimatum to dictator Maduro. Intelligence reports confirm that Trump has assembled a significant strike force in the region. The administration is also preparing for potential regime change operations, and the timeline, many are saying, is immediate. Maduro, in the meantime, has tightened his personal security, including changing beds, and leaned on Cuba, a key ally. The atmosphere is described as tense and concerning, gripping the president's inner circle, while adding that Maduro believed he remained in control and could ride out the latest and gravest threats to his 12-year rule. To reduce the risk of betrayal, Maduro has also expanded the role of Cuban bodyguards in his personal security detail and attached more Cuban counterintelligence officers to Venezuela's military. Of course, in public, he's downplayed Washington's threats by conveying a nonchalant, relaxed appearance while showing up for public events unannounced, dancing, and posting propaganda videos on TikTok. But people close to him do say that he is worried. In the meantime, Venezuela called China and Russia for help, and initially, President Putin did answer, and so did China. But as of just recently, the Association of Tour Operators of Russia has confirmed the start of an evacuation process for Russian citizens currently in Venezuela through the Organization of Special Flights. The announcement by Russian media and internationally replicated immediately caused a stir on social media and sparked a heated debate about the fragile stability of Maduro's regime. Now, of course, they're both saying that the bilateral relationship remains strong. However, the decision to evacuate Russian citizens has been interpreted as a warning sign that highlights the growing fragility of the Venezuelan regime. The context is becoming more complicated due to recent measures regarding restrictions in Venezuelan airspace, which arose after tensions between Venezuela and Washington. The public reaction has been immediate. While some citizens doubt the veracity of the announcement, others interpret the evacuation as an indication that Moscow could be anticipating significant geopolitical changes against Maduro or a rapid deterioration of the internal situation in Venezuela. Now, the New York Post is reporting that Maduro has received little support from longtime allies Russia and China. Beijing and Moscow, Maduro's two most powerful allies, have previously provided Venezuela with military equipment, army training in the face of American aggression. But both nations have strayed from their usual tactics as they face their own military and economic woes. While Russia previously deployed two nuclear-capable bombers to Venezuela as a united show of force against the U.S. in 2018, Moscow's generosity has apparently dried up as it approaches its fourth year of war in Ukraine. So far, Russia has only provided 2 oil tankers to help Venezuela pump its own crude oil for export to China. An international relations professor by the name of Vladimir Ruvinsky says that these are small gestures that are not going to be sufficient if the U.S. moves to deadly force on Venezuela. He also noted that both Russia and China are involved in tense diplomatic and trade deals with Trump, with neither nation looking to upset the American president by making Venezuela an issue. He said Russia isn't going to help Maduro beyond what they've already done. The apparent lack of support comes after Venezuela spent years building connections with Beijing, Moscow, and other American adversaries to create an economic alliance against the West. China would be the biggest loser if Maduro's government falls, as Beijing has provided more than $30 billion in major arms to Venezuela since 2000. Maduro had reached out to Russia, China, and Iran for help last month as the U.S. began massing its forces in the Caribbean. The Venezuelan leader had directly asked Russian President Putin for defensive radars, aircraft repairs, and even missiles. He also pleaded with China's president for expanded military cooperation between the two countries to face the escalation from the U.S. In the meantime, the Pope put in his 2 cents. Pope Leo urged U.S. President Trump's administration on Tuesday not to try to oust the Venezuelan president using military force. He said it would be better to attempt dialogue or impose economic pressure on Venezuela if Washington wants to pursue change there. So certainly some very concerning headlines with the United States and Venezuela. Hopefully in time cooler heads will prevail. But if not, and the United States decided to go in there, do you think that Russia would change his mind and help Venezuela? And what about China? I kind of got mixed feelings about it because Russia is definitely busy with Ukraine. Hopefully that war will end. And China's got their eye on Taiwan. So, like I said, I've got mixed feelings. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? In the meantime, I would like to move along and talk about what is going on between NATO and Russia. NATO could fire the first shot against Russia in the face of Putin's escalating shadow war on Europe, according to a top admiral. Admiral Giuseppe Cabo-Dragon, chair of NATO's military committee, said that the alliance could be forced to strike preemptively, which would be a toughening of its current policy of waiting to react. Putin has been terrorizing Europe with a campaign of sabotage and airspace violations for years, and his shadow operation is only ramping up. Various fires and explosions, including a blaze at an East London Ukrainian-owned warehouse, has been pinned on Putin. Recent cases also include the severing of undersea cables in the Baltic Sea and a string of cyber hack attacks across the continent. The surge in these interfaces is forcing NATO to reassess its traditional position of reactive military action, according to the admiral. He also said that we are studying everything. Being more aggressive or being proactive instead of reactive is something that we are thinking about. He said that the revenge cyber attacks would be the simplest option, as many NATO member nations hold the capabilities to launch them. Retaliation for physical sabotage or drone incursions would be more complex, but not out of the question. The admiral said that a preemptive strike could, under certain circumstances, be classified as a defensive action, though it is further away from our normal way of thinking and behavior. Being more aggressive compared with the aggressiveness of our counterpart could be an option. In the meantime, Russia furiously responded to NATO. The Russian Foreign Ministry issued its sharpest warning in months, calling the comment a deliberate move to sabotage Ukraine peace efforts and push Europe towards a new confrontation. As EU leaders ramp up calls for massive rearmament and NATO debates cross long-standing red lines, both sides appear to be edging into dangerous new territory. And shifting to the Middle East, the former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia has declared that there will be no normalization in the near future between Saudi Arabia and Israel. The Abraham Accords expansion that seemed inevitable just months ago has stalled. Saudi Arabia is holding firm on the Palestinian statehood as a precondition, and Israel is refusing to budge. And why does this matter? Because Saudi normalization with Israel would have reshaped the entire Middle East. It would have isolated Iran, stabilized the region, and created unprecedented economic opportunities. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu flatly rejected Palestinian statehood. He stated clearly that Israel will not accept a Palestinian state that threatens its security. This, of course, puts him in direct opposition to the Pope, the UN, and much of the international community. And you know what the thing is? Netanyahu knows something that the international community doesn't want to admit. Every time Israel has given up land for peace, it's gotten war instead. Gaza, southern Lebanon, parts of the West Bank, all becoming launching pads for attacks. So he's saying never again, and he's willing to stand alone if necessary. And it isn't stubbornness, it's survival instinct based on hard experience. But despite Netanyahu's rejection, Trump's peace plan is gaining traction at the United Nations. BBC News Watch reports that the plan has received surprising international support, with multiple nations signaling approval. The framework calls for economic development, security guarantees, and a pathway to normalized relations, but stops short of immediate Palestinian statehood. But going back to the Pope, he is actually calling for a two-state solution, and he's calling it the only solution to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In fact, he said, "We all know that at this time, Israel still does not accept that solution, but we see it as the only solution. We are also friends with Israel, and we are seeking to be a mediating voice between the two parties that might help them close in on a solution with justice for everyone. So why is this a problem with the Pope saying this? Because he reads the same Old Testament with a few added books in it here and there, but he reads the same text that we do, where God specifically warns not to divide the land of Israel. And this would divide the land of Israel. So I don't understand why he's saying that this is the only solution. But eventually it probably will happen, you guys, because God specifically says that the land will be divided. And he will judge those nations that divide his land. But moving along, according to the Times of Israel, President Trump warned Israel via social media on Monday against destabilizing Syria and its new leadership, shortly before holding a phone conversation with the Prime Minister, Netanyahu. The president's words were, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." He also said that the current president is working diligently to make sure good things happen, and that both Syria and Israel will have a long and prosperous relationship together. Everything that I've covered today is all a part of Bible prophecy. From the conflict between the United States and Venezuela, Russia and NATO, and even what's happening in the Middle East. That is also a part of prophecy. Jesus told us in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke that we would hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation would rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and we are watching that right now. As far as what's happening with Israel, we're told in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 27, that Israel will sign a covenant for 7 years with many others. And we see that start to come together, and that's with the Abraham Accords. I don't know if that is the peace agreement. It is definitely a template for the peace agreement. And I said that from the very beginning. Is President Trump the Antichrist? I don't think he is. I know that there's some of you that do believe that he is. And there's also other world leaders on the scene that could possibly be. Personally, I don't think he's come up on the scene yet. I think he's kind of in the shadows right now. He's not really making himself known. That's just my personal opinion. And we're not going to know who he is until after the rapture anyways. So look up, you guys. Look for Jesus, because he's coming soon. And he told us that all of these signs that we're seeing right now, the wars, the rumors of wars, nation rising up against nation, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the self-love, we're also told about that in the Bible. We're told about Christian persecution. I mean, the list goes on and on. I report all about that here. But look for Jesus, because he's the one that's coming soon. Sure, we can have our ideas and, we can, think it could be this person or that person. But the only person we should be looking for is Jesus. But those are your headlines for today. I want to know what you guys think. Leave your comments below. And also, when you have some time, come and visit me on my social media pages, as well as my website at www.cww7news.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.